Hi, and welcome to the Revvity Omics Challenge Accepted podcast. This series explores the latest advances in genetic and genomic testing. Through expert interviews, we get answers to questions that can proactively inform patient care and share knowledge that can empower health. Here's today's expert interview. Revvity Omics has built its reputation on excellent clinical services. Perhaps the best known of these are tests for genetic diseases and inborn errors of metabolism. In the shadow of that expertise, Revvity has also developed capabilities in clinical trial design and drug development that have made them valuable to pharmaceutical companies worldwide. You might say that they have quietly become the bespoke partner in drug development, providing important solutions that extend beyond their custom assays. Today, we are speaking with Dr. Madhuri Hegde, SVP and Chief Scientific Officer of Global Lab Services, as well as Dr. Yiping Lin, SVP and Chief Quality Regulatory and Clinical Officer at Revvity Inc. Both are members of the Revvity leadership team. Dr. Hegde and her team developed the scientific portfolio and commercial strategy for Revvity Omics Global Laboratories. She also executes on plans for global laboratories and, as such, played a vital role in leading operations for COVID laboratory testing. Dr. Lin is a leader in the pharmaceutical, diagnostics, biotech, and medical device industry. Her areas of expertise include quality assurance, regulatory submissions, and product registrations, as well as clinical affairs with FDA regulations relating to good clinical practice. Dr. Hegde and Dr. Lin, it's nice to meet you both, and thank you for being here. Dr. Hegde, I'm going to start with you. Many people think of Revvity Omics as the clinical services arm of Revvity, and that the entire focus of your business is testing newborns for genetic diseases and inborn errors of metabolism. But Revvity Omics goes far beyond that, right? Can you elaborate on the various testing capabilities of Revvity Omics in addition to newborn screening programs?
Lara, you're absolutely right. Revvity Omics has been around for a very long time and has established itself in the world of newborn screening and rare disorders testing. And that is our foundation. Revvity Omics is under the umbrella, a much larger umbrella of Revvity. And Revvity is known for newborn screening globally. So I think this is a very important aspect of what we do because that has laid the foundation of everything else we have been able to bring into our own laboratories. So I'll mention three things which really sort of explain how much further Revvity Omics has gone from using that foundation of newborn screening. We have now got a global footprint, and by global I mean we are truly represented across the globe in Europe, in Sweden, in UK, in China, and India. This global footprint is very important because clinical laboratories have to remain sensitive to the areas they're operating in, culturally sensitive, for the different kinds of tests we offer. The second thing which we have been able to do is bring in all the Revvity instrumentation and the reagents into our own laboratories and expand the kind of testing we do. So when you think of newborn screening, you think of biochemical testing, but then that has been expanded out to biomarkers for different disorders. As we know that, the science of cell and gene therapy has advanced so much, but with that comes the need to have biomarkers to understand the efficacy of these treatments. And the last thing is when we think of esoteric testing, which just goes beyond doing routine chemistry, is looking at the biochemical, the molecular aspects of disease. So we in our laboratories are doing genomics and omics testing, which expands from doing DNA-based assays such as next-generation sequencing for identifying the pathogenic variants in genes, but then using that further to develop the biomarker assays as cell and gene therapy evolves. So we have now gone much beyond just doing routine newborn screening.
Wow. But yet you bring all that experience, like you're both in the laboratory, the scientists, the clinical, and even patients, right? Like you understand the journey kind of from the beginning, it sounds like.
Absolutely. I mean, newborn screening is an ecosystem. And anything we do in our labs is within an ecosystem of a variety of different factors that play with each other when we bring a test to a clinical laboratory.
Okay, so you've described the different components. Does that mean you are in effect a one-stop shop because you can see the whole picture? You're not just coming in from one particular spot?
That's how we think of ourselves. The expertise, we have the know-how, we have the setup, and we are truly a one-stop shop, especially when it comes to new advances that have happened in our field. And I think the biggest strength we have is the backing of our parent company, which is Revvity, with that strong expertise in ideating, developing, and then manufacturing instruments and kits and taking it through the route of regulatory approvals.
Oh, no. Okay. So we even goes farther than just, so Revvity Omics, so if I'm a pharmaceutical company, you can help with screening, diagnostic testing, biomarkers, taking it through clinical approval in multiple globally, not just in the FDA or Europe.
Correct. So helping with the phase 3 clinical studies, and then actually doing the approvals, taking it through the CDX stage. This is really something we have recently got into with obviously the help of our quality and regulatory compliance, which is headed by Dr. Lin, where we actually really sort of combine this expertise to take it to that next level when interacting with pharma companies. Because pharma companies really have two things. One is they already have an approved drug in the market and they want to find patients for this drug. So we run testing programs for the pharma companies where we go and do the testing of sample comes to us. And if this is a sample which has a pathogenic variant in a particular gene, and if the patient is eligible for that particular drug, then identifying those rare disease patients is very important. So that's one aspect of it. And the other aspect of it is when a pharma company is developing a new drug, they want to go and have a regulatory approval with a test, which is either a diagnostic test or a biomarker assay to go with their drug. So these are two different kinds, literally polar opposites when you're talking about regulatory approval, but we are doing both sides of it.
Oh, that's incredible. Okay, so you mentioned rare disease, and of course, inborn errors of metabolism. That kind of brings up ideas of rare. Do you also do more common diseases, or is your focus rare?
The focus has been rare, and I would say, when collectively rare, individually rare, collectively common, right? That's really how rare diseases end up. And the reason I say that is, though rare disease is rare, and when we talk about them being collectively common, is that the foundation, the platforms, the systematic sort of the instrumentation that is needed around it is pretty much the same. The expertise for interpretation starts differing based on the disease, and we have board certified directors who look at the data. But again, how you bring it together is very important. Also, on the other side of it is the instrumentation, the reagents, and the kits that need to go through FDA approval or putting that entire systematic thing through approval. And the third piece of which it's not in the labs right now, but it is at Revvity, is screening of different drugs, which is pretty much an R&D exercise, but we have capabilities in that area as well. But they are not in the clinical setting.
Right. Okay. But still, but screening that's the first step, right? That's the preclinical. So you even go back to the preclinical stage.
Absolutely.
Wow. And I can see how if you're doing screening preclinically, in some cases, those are going to match to rare diseases, in some cases to more common diseases. You're agnostic, right?
Correct.
Wow. And so what about CRISPR? Everybody's talking about CRISPR, and to what extent how does CRISPR play a role in what you all are doing?
Right now, a lot of CRISPR activity is in the preclinical stage. There are obviously some drugs that are starting to move into the phase 2 and phase 3 studies. So in the preclinical stage, we do have our affiliates which do screening assays for CRISPR. Those are purely in the R&D and preclinical stage aspect of it. They are not in Revvity Omics. We do have collaborations with pharma who are developing, let's just call it a CRISPR-based drug strategy for some rare disorders, which is really exciting, right? Because CRISPR is finally entering the clinical arena. But also with that, it brings challenges of how you're going to monitor something that is a CRISPR based drug. And it really requires a lot of thinking, a changing of direction, and the expertise to bring this all together, because CRISPR has a lot of bioinformatics component to it. Where the CRISPR-Cas9 molecule is going to attach itself, what part of the genome it's going to address, making sure there is no off-target hit. So we are engaged in all those levels in our clinical laboratory with our own bioinformatic tools, but that brings up new challenges when it comes to quality and regulatory aspect of it. And this is really new to us too, but we are learning, we are educating ourselves, and we are trying to make sure that we are taking care of this entire product line of a CRISPR based approach.
So you said something that was fascinating that I'd like to hear more about, because I hadn't thought about it this way. How to monitor a CRISPR-based drug to make sure that it's on target and it's working, because that's kind of that's the fear that I bring into it when I start hearing about CRISPR. Mm-hmm. So that safety net is going to be critical, I would say, for physicians, for the FDA, for anyone, if you're going to advance a drug, or even just to get investors to know that you can monitor this and pull the plug early. So you can do all that too.
We are definitely starting to move in that direction, because obviously CRISPR is new and we are putting in processes in place, developing new informatic tools to address this particular aspect of CRISPR. It requires some really advanced bioinformatics, but also making sure that we work out these new tools, looking at what the guidance is there from the regulatory agencies when developing informatic tools. So when we marry that guidance, it cannot be done independent of that guidance. The guidance and what we have done in our lab, in our informatic tools, has to align and make sure there are no gaps in the requirements. And this is a massive undertaking, obviously, because this is so new. It's exciting, it's very new, but we have got enough background and a foundation which we have built to build on it and understand what is needed that we need to do to work with these companies.
That's exciting. It's really exciting. Dr. Lin, I'd love to bring you in now, like this talk about regulatory guidance, and like Dr. Hegde was saying, working with the agency and what it requires. Can you tell me about the different stages of drug development, and then where Revvity Omics plays a role in those different stages?
Absolutely. As a Revvity corporate officer for quality regulatory clinical, I come into complementary to Madhuri has explained our offering. I would also like to add on that infrastructure from a broader aspects. Quality regulatory clinical in overall capacity, we be able to support a drug from discovery phase all the way to realization. And each stage require different intensity of quality regulatory and clinical oversight. And Revvity as a whole, a large corporation, we do have a lot of capacity to guide on the regulatory strategy from the get-go, and then along the way for development cycle, as well as validation phase, which typically having analytical phase and clinical validation phase, and all the way alongside to be able to prepare submission and to see how to get this device or assay or drug to realization stage that we can offer to the patients who need it. For the global aspects, regulatory landscape have ever been so complicated. Compound with Europe, IVDR, as we all aware of, and then other emerging countries who have their own regulatory regime that we also need to take into consideration.
Do you have contacts then directly with the different regulatory agencies? Do you have people who have come from regulatory agencies or know the individuals there? And can you partner with pharma to work with the regulatory agencies?
Yes, absolutely. Because over years in this industry, we build upon those relationships to mutually having that trust partnership with regulatory agencies globally. And those relationship and trust aspects help us to get that regulatory strategy and plan to be totally vet out and in a realistic and scientific driven base and obviously risk-based approach. So we can really work together toward that.
So what I'm hearing, it almost sounds like you're like a contract research organization on steroids. I mean, is that right? So typically a CRO, one would go to a CRO, a pharma would go to a CRO for this. You're talking about something way beyond a CRO, right?
That's correct. Yeah. The ownership of us in the regulatory or clinical areas is more accountability than CRO traditionally would be. CRO, in my eyes, will be more like a client-to-client relationship. Here, we as a legal manufacturer ultimately also own the post-market surveillance, customer complaints. So we take full responsibility throughout the product life cycle.
So you maintain that partnership. So if a pharma company, especially because there's all these startup pharma companies, right, that have single drugs in their pipeline, and so you can really partner with them to advance through all these stages.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. And there will be some customized solution depending on the company we partner with, and definitely we be able to adjust the business model so we get the common goal achieved. And bottom line is that really get that needed drug or device available to the patients.
This sounds incredible to me. So instead of having to have all these skills in-house before you can advance a drug, a baby pharmaceutical company, let's call it, they can partner with you, but they don't have to invest in this full knowledge base. They can partner with you as far as they need to go and know that you have it for them at the very beginning, as well as you can go the whole distance with them to post-marketing if necessary. Did I understand that correctly?
That's well, what's that going to this journey? Yes.
Yeah. So what's that going to do to the future of drug development if it's now smaller companies can now take ideas and kick them and test them, and it's not just the big pharmas that can take drugs up? What's that going to do? It seems disruptive, like wonderful.
I think what is going to happen is, there is small, medium, and big pharma. And, what Dr. Lin was, I think, really nicely alluded to is we can work with all these three, depending on the size of the company and depending on their global reach. Their asks of us are different based on the drug they are developing, whether it's a rare or a common disease, the biomarker, or whether it's a diagnostic assay. And there are just so many permutations and combinations. I think Dr. Lenny would agree with me that no single company right now we are working with has the same, two companies have the same ask from us. Every single company we are working with, irrespective of the size, is really a customized approach to their drug, the disease they're looking at, the biomarker they want to look at. And this requires a significant amount of expertise, right? Because it is just so customized, there is no standard pathway to developing the disorder or the drug. The knowledge is evolving constantly, and we have to make sure we combine that within the regulatory framework without letting it go sideways. Dr. Lin, would you agree with that?
Totally. And I think oftentimes people think about quality regulatory is a more rigid function. I think it's about time to introduce that Revvity, Omics, or Revvity as a whole. We have more creative but compliant culture and thinking. So how to tailor the needs to be able to provide the proper support, and we can increase the velocity of the new drug development will be what we would like to see.
I also heard you say, stop it from going sideways, which I kind of like, because I feel that there are drugs that don't work and shouldn't be approved, but then there are also drugs that probably should be approved where it goes sideways somewhere along the path and they don't make it. You should be able to maybe see some of those problems coming because of the depth of your experience, right?
I think there are two ways to look at it, right? One is drugs which don't make to market, and also repurposing of drugs.
Yes.
There are some rare diseases where drug repurposing has become a big activity now. Again, all these approaches are very customized approaches. It's not like the same formula can be applied across the board, but the same foundation can be used to customize the approach. And that is critical, having that expertise, because a lot of these, discussions are very involved. This is hours and hours of discussion with the pharma company, with the understanding what disease they are working on, what the biomarker or the diagnostic approach they want to take, and then also bringing in our scientific team to understand what are the requirements to develop such an assay. Do we have those systematic requirements in house? Do we need to bring something in? Again, being under this umbrella of Revvity helps us tremendously, because we can reach out far and wide within our own company to seek these solutions. There could be a part of our company which is already engaged in some activity which we are not aware of, and this is where the collaboration piece internally is huge for us. We say this quite often: we are united in science and united in impact, and this is really where collaboration, intercompany and inter unit collaboration is absolutely critical, that where you can reach out to your own colleagues to find the solutions. I myself often do that, where someone is approaching us and I reach out to my colleagues to talk about it, to understand how we can provide the best solution. And once that is done, this is when I reach out to Dr. Lynn, because she's really the expert in the quality and regulatory compliance area, because we want to be within that framework of compliance before we can say that something XYZ can be done to a customer.
It's fascinating. So, Dr. Lynn, Dr. Hegde earlier on mentioned companion diagnostics. Can you sort of explain more what they are and how that fits in the whole drug development path?
Companion diagnostics, just by definition, companion is a key important element there. And so we go alongside with drug delivery, and then we be able to find a way of assay or the test, be able to, through drug development phase, to be able to ensure the safety and effectiveness advocacy is there. And then once we get that done, then we co-submit with drug companies to see if this assay will always be able to use companion diagnostic along with a drug to make sure drug regime once it implement in patients, and actually we can continue monitor the safety and effectiveness. Or in some cases that assay itself, diagnostic assay itself, can be off and then independently become commercially available assay, so you can benefit or apply to more patients that not necessarily tied with one particular drug.
So you're capable of doing both to do the CDX for drug development as well as afterwards for patient care.
Yes.
It sounds extraordinary, and it sounds like you really bring a lot in partnership. So what I've heard, you've got just a breadth of knowledge, you've got a depth of experience, you've got an integrated team. So what are your other advantages compared to anyone else? Why should they at least talk to you, right? Sometimes there's a fit and sometimes they're not, but why would they talk to you as opposed to talk to someone else?
I think that's a great question. And the way I would sort of answer this is, a pharmaceutical company has to think about, obviously the drug itself and the manufacturing of the drug and having that drug reach far and wide, right? And this is the key aspect of it, because market access is very important. And this is where Revvity Omics, I think, really differentiates itself from some other places which can do something similar to Revvity Omics. Because we sit under the Revvity umbrella, and Revvity itself is represented in 190 countries. So we have that deep market reach combined with the expertise of developing the assay, having the manufacturing capacity for the assay itself, which any other similar outfit may not have, because then they are going to reach out to a manufacturer. Whereas in this case, we become the manufacturer of the kit itself, and do that within a very well-established quality and regulatory compliance framework. I think this is really kind of, in a nutshell, how we differentiate from other places. From my own experience and recent conversations with large, medium, and small pharma, they're excited about the global footprint. They want to reach China, they want to reach India, right? They really are keen on getting their drugs into these markets where obviously the affected population is much larger, and they want to have that expertise in collaboration, because these are not like you give someone something, you do it, and then we are off in a separate different direction. This is very much a collaborative exercise where the drug, the biomarker, or the diagnostic assay are just going in parallel and meeting at different points during that entire life cycle of actual drug development. So it's a beautiful relationship, it's a very collaborative relationship, but it requires deep expertise.
You're right. I hadn't thought that through. So, for example, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, China did the first their first rare disease sort of policy initiative. And I think there's a lot to figure out what exactly does that mean, right? But you all are on the ground floor knowing what that means to be able to provide guidance if any company wants to try to take a rare disease drug in through China, where nothing's rare, right, in a population that large.
I think I'll give you a very simple example here. And the example I would give you is of the sample type itself, right? Dried blood spot card. Newborn screening is fundamentally based on using dried blood spot card as a sample to take it further through the entire screening cycle. We manufacture the DBS cards. We have taken actually our DBS cards through the regulatory agency's approval. And Dr. Len, you can sort of talk about that a little bit more. But we have, in our experience now, really differentiated and established the use of DBS cards, not just for biochemical assays, but for molecular assays also, the DNA-based assays. We can do the whole genome. So we can do the single gene or a single mutation. And we really take great pride in that, because once you have an assay on a DBS card, you can only imagine where all you can reach on the globe, right? You're not dependent on that whole blood sample or a urine sample to ship samples across from here and there. You really take away that complexity of shipping samples. And that completely allows that deep reach and deep access for patients to get the test they need. Dr. Len, what are your thoughts on the newborn screening aspect of it?
Yes, I think DBS is a really clever tool for specimen collection, especially for newborn neonatal samples. Tiny prick of the heel of the baby can collect that sample valuable to generate many, many information out of it. So we recently exploring DBS card be offered to some far-reached regions like Mid-East and or underdeveloped country to be able to help accelerate some of the diagnostic testing speed. So yes, that's really cool.
It's completely cool. It sounds like we could keep talking for a while, but our time is sort of wrapping up. Is there anything else that I should have asked or that you want to make sure that you say about this, just as the foundation for people to get to know you all and what you all have to offer?
I do have something I would like to add on is that I think we talk about a lot of tangible stuff. I also would like to let the audience know that Revvity also offer the digital solutions. For example, software as a service, basically cloud-based for informatic help drug discovery phase, and many other algorithm solutions, or even eventually go into the AI machine learning space. So we have a lot diversified portfolio to offer.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for mentioning that, because we didn't even touch on that.
It's really exciting. This is the right time to do what we're actually really doing right now, right? There is just the advances in cell and gene therapy and all the types of therapeutics are just going so fast. And to have these tools right from discovery stage to preclinical and then finally culminating into Revvity Omics being the clinical arm and all under one umbrella is truly phenomenal.
Yeah, it is. It's exciting. That's all we have time for part one in our two-part interview. In part two, we'll be discussing how Revvity Omics' ability to develop a biomedical assay can help a pharmaceutical company in drug development. Thank you both for your time, and I look forward to hearing examples of the types of diagnostic assays that Revvity Omics might create.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to this edition of the Revvity Omics Challenge Accepted podcast. For further topics we explore, please visit our website, revvity.com. Until next time, goodbye.